Good evening, friends. It makes me feel so old because it's been such a long time since I stopped practicing marketing, as you people do. So I hope that anything that I say today that is outdated, you excuse me for that. I've not been practicing for a long time. I'm privileged to be standing before you. Just back in Nigeria. I worked in Nigeria before. It's been 10 months since I came back. What a difference the country has gone through. I must thank you and the organizations that you represent. A lot has changed since I was last in Nigeria. Many new brands, many new companies, lots of success stories every time I move around. And perhaps for those who live in this country, because you do, you don't recognize that there's been a lot of growth in this country in spite of the volatility. I've been asked to share my take on business growth in a volatile economy. For me, every economy is volatile. It is possibly scale, that is the conversation, and number two, the time frame, which should be something we worry about. But whether you're in the US, Japan, China, Europe, you will always face volatility. So to us in business, volatility is something you have to live with, all right? It is like a surfer. If there are no waves, you can't surf. And yet for those of us who don't surf, you're always worried. Isn't this person gonna drown? Won't this wave break their ribs? And yet, that's what they excel about. So just coming back to the two things, what is business growth and what is volatility? Business growth can be defined and reported in many ways, depending on what the stakeholders would like to do at any particular time. There are those who report growth to mean volume or share growth. There are those who report growth to be profit. There are those who report growth to be how much dividends am I paying to the stakeholders. So growth comes in different ways. And behind each of the growth strategies that you'd like to run, there are different things that you do and the things you react to differently. So you could be two competitors or two brands in the same space, but because you're driving a different growth strategy, your responses are always going to be different. But just before we get into that, the other thing I wanted to mention is that this whole idea of business growth, it is a time thing. Sometimes you scale down or you slow down a business in order to grow. Sometimes you allow yourself to decline in order to grow for the future. So every time we're talking about business growth, it's not possible that for a business like the one I work for, established in 1959, over 250 years, there have been lows and highs. But over 260 years, we've grown. We've grown. So it's just the lens with which you approach the growth, and that also informs the choices that you make in order not to panic at every volatility that you see. On volatility, there are many things, of course, that drive this. Some are global trends. We all know that, whether it is Brexit or emergence of China. There have been two big global currencies between the dollar and the euro. Now the yuan from China is becoming a factor. All of these things, depending on the business you run, are really important as a mega trend. The speakers before me have spoken about technology. The world is becoming younger. You know, the population is much younger across Africa, across the world. The rise of Africa. I'm told by 2050 or thereabout, there will be more Africans on Earth than anybody else. How do you deal with those? And they will be living in a continent that is so fragmented, it's inaccessible, it's still rural. What do you do with that? There are socioeconomic things that we know, terrorism. You know, when terrorism came in, for us who sell drinks, people don't go to the bars that much because, you know, they need to feel safe. And yet, the company, like the guy who stopped me at the gate, I'm sure if there wasn't terrorism, that man wouldn't be having a business to run. So in the same environment, terrorism becomes a problem for me because bars are not opening and keeping open for long enough. And for him, who is running a security company, actually it's an opportunity. Does he want terrorism to end? Maybe not. Do I want it to end? Yes, of course I do. Yes, of course I do. So There are those big trends that, what do you do about them as a business? There are things you can influence in a small country. You can come together as a business association to influence a bit of policy regulation and delay the impact of that. So there are only two things you can do about volatility. Either you smoothen the volatility by doing things like partnering with government for regulation on taxes and things, or you ride the wave. And in riding the wave is where I really want to focus my conversation today. So for us who are in multinationals, I work for a multinational company. I think the one tension is in Africa, in Nigeria, the brands or the companies that are growing fastest actually are the local companies. Across any category you look at, multinationals are really taking a bloody nose. So what is it that local companies are able to read the trends better than we do as multinationals? So for you who are running brands that are owned by multinationals, I will not give any examples here. I don't want to be hated by any of you. But any category you look, it appears like the local businesses have got a better nuance in reading volatility than we do. So there's this one thing which is emerging called glocal, being global but really being local. How do you master that and become really insightful in how you run the business and survive in times like this? So those are the two tensions, all right? There's another piece of tension which says, in Africa, in Nigeria, what government does is still really, really important. You can't avoid that. They set the tax, they set the laws, and all of that. But also, they're also managing the tension between, do I reward capital because I want more people to come in, invest the money, create jobs, and pay some wages? So there's always that tension. The economists in the room would know that. There's the other, which is saying, I want to increase wages so that people have got a bit of money in pocket and they can spend. And it's when they spend that more investors can come. So there's always a tension. Where does government get this money? They will tax us more, and so on. So there's always a tension. Volatility will always be with us. Don't worry too much about it. We just have to master it. Because if you do, you will do nothing, because there's risk everywhere. Let me go to the three things I wanted to discuss. One is Nigerian economy actually volatile? And when I was looking at this, nothing I say here should offend anybody. Sometimes you look at an economy and say, okay, over 5 years, it has been tough in Nigeria. Possibly over 30 years, the trend evens out a bit more. So for companies or businesses that want to be in Nigeria for 40, 50, 100 years, you think about it like, is this a passing storm? For those who are looking at, I have to report every quarter a profit, I have to report every year. 5 years of underperformance, like we know the economy has been underperforming in Nigeria, is a long time, So I just wanted to pick up a few things, and all of you know this, really. Unemployment has been growing in this country. For the first time in the last 9 months, unemployment has actually overtaken underemployment. There's been a lot of underemployment in Nigeria for a long time, and we are used to that. People do jobs that really don't pay them enough, but somehow they get by and they buy something that we sell to them. The difficulty is over the last 9 months, when you see the graphs, unemployment has actually overtaken underemployment. It's a problem. For those who may not know, the number of unemployed, employable people in Nigeria is bigger than the total population in Burkina Faso. There are 21 million Nigerians who are out of jobs, who should be in jobs. That's a big number. Why is that important? Social disturbance doesn't come out of nowhere. These are youth who have no jobs, they don't have income, so maybe they're attracted to that kind of thing. Petty crime, big-time crime, consumers looking for deals, all of that, we shall see the impact of that. But it's just knowing what is really underlying the volatility. So when government was discussing the need to increase wages, it's a real issue, because until you resolve the 21 million Nigerians who wake up every day and they don't have a job to go to, everything else might not work. So that's a big deal there. We all know that, oil revenue in this country is a big deal. But yeah, that has been going through a bit of trouble. Depending on the tweet that Mr. Trump sends out every morning, you don't know what is going to happen to Iran and what is going to happen to the prices, on the world market. And that affects us as well as a country. And I think that has been the biggest unknown. What is going to happen to oil? Yeah, one will argue, does really the oil revenue get down to the street? I think it does somehow. And that's important for us to watch. There's some other micro things like the pot just not working. You wake up one morning and a papa pot can't work. What do you do? For us, we have lots of stuff we import. So how do you, prepare yourself for that in order to continue securing your business for growth, where you want to see the growth coming from? So there are lots of things that are driving volatility. Is there volatility in Nigeria? Yes. Is it unique to Nigeria? Possibly not. What is unique about Nigeria, though, is it's the only country I've worked in. I've worked in 8 countries. This is the only country I work in where all of these things happen at the same time every day, all the time. That is what is unique and different about Nigeria. In other countries, you can almost, isolate and say, I'm going to deal with 4 of these. But here, every day, all of the above happen at the same time. And I think that's difficult. If there's always one thing I speak about every time I'm given an opportunity to speak to audiences like here in Nigeria, I always ask for 2 things. Can we lead better as a nation, as organizations, as society? This country has everything we need, but we need to lead ourselves better. Number 2 is, can we just reduce the number of children we are giving birth to? Our population growth is a problem. When you look at over the last 6 years, to be honest, a population growing at 3.1%, with the economy growing at about 1.5%, we are becoming poorer every day in real terms. On the issue of corruption, which is a leadership element, I have been told by economists that if we reduce corruption across the country by 50%, that is bigger than the GDP of Ghana that we can save every year. So it's a big deal. So for me, those 2 things, if we can deal with those, I think volatility will be smoothened a little bit. So first myth is it a myth that Nigeria is volatile? It's a fact. The second thing I wanted to speak about is, are there opportunities in a volatile economy? The answer is yes. And then we have many examples we can go through. We don't have much time. I think the key thing here for us as marketers is all volatility does is change consumer behavior. And once you understand that, then you work out a trick. How do I serve the new behavior better? Occasions will change. The SKUs they are looking for will be different. The sizes of the shopping baskets might change. But the impact of volatility is change of consumer behavior. How they use your brands, how frequently they use it, the quantity they buy in a go, breaking bulk, they shop every week. All of these things then reflect themselves in how your organization answers the 4 spaces. One is, do I have the product that answers the new consumer behavior? So whether you innovate, reduce, increase the size of your SKUs, it doesn't matter. But you have to look back at your product. Does this product still speak to the consumer opportunity as it is now? And I think that's where the local companies are beating us, international companies. They are more agile. They really respond much better. And the examples are all around us. I will save the examples. I don't want to be hated. But somehow the local companies just get it right, much better than us. What is it about us marketing for multinationals that just gets us slow? So agility, when you're faced with volatility, is a survival tool that we have to sharpen. So product. Number 2 is creating brand love, whatever it is you call it these days, awareness for your brands, equity for your brands. Is it still important when somebody is under pressure and uncertain? How much they love Guinness? Is it really important? What else would trigger a purchase decision? So our traditional thought that I will go after equity is important, by all means. It made me what I am because I started my career in marketing. But just testing that against, under the circumstances consumers are now, what is driving the choice they're making? So I really think being thoughtful around that is really, really important. I think the third area is looking at your root consumer. How do I get to market? Again, local companies, local businesses, local players, they seem to be better at doing this. They are nimble, they are agile, they are more responsive. So how you get to market, who gets there faster, competition for cash is a big deal. So every time you go to a supermarket and just look around, what has this person bought? What is in their basket? You're like, my product is not in there. That should be important. For us as marketing people, just beginning to understand that really, at the end of the day, the guy has a decision to make. And that is not because they loved Guinness or they loved Sportsman or whatever, Dunhill cigarettes. But they're under a different, type of tension. I think the fourth and last one is the service you provide. When people are under pressure, they'll buy you if they feel you're really, really giving it everything you have to give a service beyond anything else. So I think those four things is where the disruptions will come from. Do you have the product, so you innovate, you change SKUs to hit price points that possibly you don't have. You really go to the messaging. What message am I giving these consumers now? Is that the most relevant thing that they want to hear from me now? Then you look at your route consumer or route market, depending on what you call it, really significant because this changes. People don't want to, I've taken a taxi, I've gotten home, I'm not going to get out of my neighborhood. Is stuff available? The luxury of leaving office, stopping up at a supermarket, taking another taxi and all of that seems to go away. So being really sensitive to tracing the consumers where they live, work, what other limited occasions they go into, and following with the pace and being sharp about that. So it's being insightful. So for me, my thought about this is all volatility does is it changes consumer behavior. Either they switch brands or they switch categories, they switch sizes, or they actually swap out of the category. If somebody was flying business class, they fly economy until they stop flying. If it is in Europe, you go by train until you try a bus. So they do all of these things when volatility hits them. And the final thing is, squeezing. People who mop their houses once every day, they might mop it once every 2 days or once every 3 days because they're just dealing with, I don't know when my next income will come. But I think for us to be able to listen to the fact that occasions and usage, or whether it is frequency or weight of usage, changes so quickly. I think that's the agility. So is there opportunity for growth under volatility? Yes, there is. What do you do about it? Listen to your business model, be agile, be insightful, stay close to the pulse. Consumer decision-making seems to be changing very rapidly as well. The other thing I wanted to speak about, which I think is a myth, if you grow volume, gain share, is that growth? Is it really growth? And the industry I work in at the moment want to say, we are growing, but are you making money? So over time, capital chases money, right? So capital will switch out. So if you're running a brand which is growing volume, gaining share, but you're not making money, at some point you have to make a decision and be careful because capital switches out. And for us who are working for multinationals, the next time you go to ask for capital investment, it's like, no, the money will be sent to Mexico or somewhere else. So really being connected as a marketing leader to what is the growth need for the business. What is the growth need and being connected to that. Sometimes as marketing commercial people, we get wired to drive the volume, gain the share, because that's what makes us excited about what we do. Okay, is growth assured in a volatile economy? The answer is no, it's not. It's just being smart. It's being smart about the choices you are making. And again, examples abound. In home care especially, it's a category that interests me, home care, when you see what is going on there. The liquids versus the powders, the solid soaps, the sizes, the price points. Home care tends to be really, really responsive. And if there's anything, is there somebody here who works for home care? Unilever and the like? But they are very responsive to this, and I think they are really nuanced. So if there's anything we can learn from that category is how they respond to volatility very quickly. It's also observing the mega trends, which might sound to be very far. So I was talking to a friend of mine who works in home care in East Africa, not here. And she says to me, their biggest problem is China. there's excess capacity in China. It's not about Africa, it's about China. And I'm like, why? Apparently, there's a lot of excess capacity in China. The Chinese are switching out of using powder, going into liquids. So everybody who has got a factory that can produce powder is dumping it in Africa at half the price. What do you do with that? So just being observant that even your competitive set under volatility changes almost every week. Sometimes we read the same competitors. No offense, SC Nielsen will give you the same references. Ipsos will give you the same references. And yet, Chinese have made a decision which is different and is far away from us. And you're competing with somebody who is so different. So what are the three things? Really, this is format to drive price, route consumer to be present at the point of choice, really important, acknowledging these consumers is either where they work, they're going to shop, or where they live. So being competitive at outlet base. And number three is great appealing campaigns. I think that gives us the jobs as marketing people. Is that tension, and I'm told there's going to be a discussion later, how do you keep faith in investing behind your brands when times are hard? I don't think the debate is whether you should do it or not, but it's how do you become more effective and more effective with less money. I think that's the conversation. Sometimes we as marketing people think about finance people as being bad to us. They're not. But they're just challenging us to say, what you're doing is the right thing, but is there another way you can do it more effectively and more efficiently? So in the time I have, I would be saying, yes, Nigeria is volatile. The drivers are global. Some are local. We know that. Can you grow in volatility? Yes, you can. Why? Evidence suggests that if you are agile, you are insightful, you go back to your product, you switch your message, you really look at your route consumer, you provide great service, you will grow. You then have to go back inside your company and say, what is the kind of growth we are looking for now? Is it growth for profit? Is it growth for volume? Is it growth for value? What is it? And then you connect your marketing effort to that type of growth that the business is asking for. Long-term versus short-term is another decision tension point. Will your board give you 2 years of decline in order to grow 5 years out? Or do they want the results every quarter? If they do, of course, the choices you make are going to be really different. So being able to have that conversation all around, what is the time frame we have, given the reality that we have at the moment? Finally, for me, is to, if there's one thing that I keep saying to people lately, watch China and the impact of China. If you've not gone to China for holiday, I really plead with you, go to China for holiday and see the things these guys are doing. They're all over us, and they have such deep pockets. And for us who are marketing brands in Africa, we're going to be swept away if we don't really take care and take notes of China. So adapt at pace, really be nuanced with your price. Be global, but really think, act, execute locally. Sometimes when we say that, we think that's not exciting, but that is where the magic is. Be really effective and efficient with your marketing campaigns so that you don't run into this argument with your finance director. And be very effective with your distribution. I think for me, those are the things that will get you out of jail in an environment like this. Thanks for listening.